I joined on deck. I had 150 person cohort. We had, I launched this thing now. We had like 40 people sign up just from an email list, and I had 0 all across the board a year ago. Right. So like Twitter was like 100% the central node in that whole thing. So I'm like constantly in this battle now as well of like, how much do I want? And I've got to basically still package as part of the course. Like, what do I want to tell people to do on Twitter? And you know what I'm actually getting more and more towards is that, okay, you should be publishing pretty constantly, but like don't over-engineer that. I went down that road. It's just like, it's a hamster wheel and you will hate yourself for it very quickly. But get consistent, like put stuff out there, share your thoughts, basically, share what you're learning, be providing value. And then, but I think that the real key is the connection stuff. It's in the replies, it's in the DMs, it's following people's accounts and being intentional at finding people who are interested in the same things as you.
Because if I don't, I'll forget.
Yeah.
So there's no kind of intro. I'm not gonna big you up or anything like that. We'll just start having a conversation. The thing I wanted to mention there, just before I hit record, is that I have a bet, and I've said this on many podcasts now. I have a bet with podcasting that podcasting is gonna continue to rise. Obviously, that's not a big bet, but I think the kind of podcasts that are going to rise more and more and more is the freeform conversations where people are, you know what, just having a conversation. How revolutionary is that? But at this point, you've probably been on quite a few podcasts, right?
Very much.
How often have you actually been on a podcast where you've just had a conversation with somebody?
Yeah, very rarely. And those are the best ones.
Yes. How often do you actually turn up and they say, right, my audience is this, and these are all the questions, and I'm going to rattle off these questions at you one after one after one, and do no follow-up and get no interesting insights out of you whatsoever? Yeah,
it's just sound bites.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
And then what do they get turned into? They get turned into threads on Twitter.
Exactly.
And then we end up with this kind of big old circle jerk of content.
Yeah.
I wrote a Substack about this the other day, about a big content pyramid scheme that it is though, isn't it? You end up with nothing. You end up with no meaningful insight whatsoever.
Yeah. No, totally.
And I can tell you think a little bit like this to me because you don't endlessly tweet, do you?
No, I did for a bit and I just couldn't. I hated it. I couldn't keep it up.
What did you hate about it?
I mean, it felt like it felt like I was on a treadmill. Yeah. Like I had to just keep doing it and repurposing stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I'd rather like be inspired and then just burst out a whole bunch of stuff and just go like that.
Yeah. I think Twitter is both amazing and really annoying. It is like both the devil and the god. Because if you feed the machine constantly, and I'm thinking of, somebody like Jack Butcher here, if you feed the machine constantly like he did for a year, you end up with such a huge audience that you can then turn it to something that you actually care about.
Right.
But you have to forget yourself for a year.
Yeah.
To be able to do that. And I think you're probably a little bit like me in that you can't stay on that treadmill for long enough to reap the rewards.
Yeah. It's boring, right? It's just boring because you get typecast as like this type of thing, and then you have to keep doing that type of thing.
Yes. Which is kind of good. Good to be typecast, but also incredibly boring to make content like that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think we're very similar in that respect.
What's the middle ground for you then?
Are we recording, by the way?
Yeah.
Are you recording?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Yeah.
I'm just not recording through Zoom.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay, cool. Middle ground.
I'm stealth recording.
Yeah, that's sneaky. I love it. No, so middle ground, that's a great question. I think the middle ground for me is like sharing what you're learning so that it's authentic. This is recent, by the way. Like I've just started like getting into it more like this. So sharing what you're learning, and then every now and then doing research into something that's super interesting and like putting a bit more thought into a thread. That feels like the balance. And maybe that's like once a week. And because you have a podcast, I have a podcast. I did a bunch of those sessions for ODCC. I have a gold mine of content. So I just go back and listen to a conversation and just like come and like take notes basically, and then just put that into like a thread or a blog post or an atomic essay or whatever. And that can be like my one big sort of contribution for the week, or creation for the week. But then otherwise, like now I do a lot more from my phone now. I used to use like Typefully and Hypefury and all those things like constantly. And now I do it very rarely.
You prefer to be more in the moment and make things like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to think, I think we might have talked about this. I used to think strategically about how often I would post, when I would post. I had like different slots during the day, and I try to fill up all of those slots all the time. And I just stopped doing that now. It's like, if I have something, it's good, I'm going to publish it right away. I'm not going to schedule it. I still schedule every now and then, but very rarely. I just rather push it out there.
I think it kind of depends what your goals are. I think the cream will always rise to the top. If you are making something that's useful or valuable, and I hate that word, and usually on my other podcast, by the way, Andrew, when I say valuable, I usually go like this. Valuable. When you make something that's good, it will rise to the top. So you don't need to really be that bothered about when you post it or things like that. But the only thing that posting regularly does is feed the algorithm, which keeps the potential for you for your content to be pushed out there. That keeps the potential high. But then when you step off that treadmill, you quickly realize that the algorithm doesn't like you anymore. So you're in this kind of constant battle of trying to publish regularly and also write good things and make good things and not completely give up to the algorithm. It's a damn tough place to be, especially when the kind of people that you're working with cohort-based courses and things like that, that feels like Twitter feels like one of the natural places to market a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I'm going through this exact thought process now because I've just launched a course, a self-paced course, and a big part of it will be Twitter. The sort of community part of the course will actually be on Twitter. And I want to encourage people to build in public on Twitter because I've been using it intentionally for only a year. And I joined on deck. I had 150 person cohort. We had, I launched this thing now. We had like 40 people sign up just from an email list, and I had 0 all across the board a year ago. Right. So like Twitter was like 100% the central node in that whole thing. So I'm like constantly in this battle now as well of like, how much do I want? And I've got to basically still package as part of the course. Like, what do I want to tell people to do on Twitter? And you know what I'm actually getting more and more towards is that, okay, you should be publishing pretty constantly, but like don't over engineer that. I went down that road. It's just like, it's a hamster wheel and you will hate yourself for it very quickly. But get consistent, like put stuff out there, share your thoughts, basically share what you're learning, be providing value. And then, but I think that the real key is the connection stuff. It's in the replies, it's in the DMs, it's following people's accounts and being intentional about finding people who are interested in the same things as you. That's like, to me, is like, it's the stuff that doesn't scale, but it's so high leverage because you can find that one person, there'll be one in a follower account, which is not going to get you very far. But that one person could be a partner. It could be a business, a customer. It could be like, there's just so many high leverage things that come from building a relationship with someone. So I think that's where the focus should be.
I 100% agree with you. I was in the same situation. I had about 600 followers or something when I started taking Twitter seriously in February 2020, which is a little over a year now. And I had no kind of audience or any of that kind of thing, no connections. I'd never used it for any of that kind of thing. And my focus initially was to take Twitter seriously. That was the simple thing that I was going to do. Write 10 tweets per day, worry about publishing. And the networking thing never came into my mind early on.
Yeah.
And then I started to realize that I was making these cool connections. We met on Twitter. It's ended up ultimately leading to this podcast, but I came into one of the courses that you were running, and I gave a workshop. And that kind of connection has led to all other things with the same kind of thing that we did together with lots of other people. But I think if I would have never have stepped off that hamster wheel, like you said, I would have never have realized those value of those connections, because all I'd be doing right now is I'd be thinking about right now is I've got Andrew on the podcast and I need to get a good thread out of him, so we're going to talk about these things. All I'd be doing is, instead of talking to you, I'd be trying to mine you for everything possible to promote essentially the next guest coming on my podcast. Without focusing on the connections. And that's the balance, isn't it? That's the difficult thing, especially if people are coming to your course and you're trying to tell them the right way of doing this. For me, I think the right way is be human, share what you know or what you don't know, what you're learning, like you said, and make the connections. Just meet people. I don't think there's much more to it.
It's the difference between, in the context I'm thinking of having a course on how to do Twitter and versus like how to use Twitter for another objective, an ultimate, like a bigger objective. And like that whole hamster wheel thing and all that, that's how you beat or leverage or make use of the algorithm. But using Twitter as a tool for whatever else you want to use it for it's a totally different skill set. And it's a lot less frustrating. It's a lot less annoying. It's actually just an incredibly untapped resource, I think, for people who are not on Twitter.
It is, because the amount of times I've had conversations with people like what we're having now, and we get off the Zoom call and they go, "You know what, Craig, you're exactly like your Twitter profile." That's ultimately, to my eyes, what anybody would want from their Twitter. It's like the ultimate business card almost, isn't it? It's like this live business card that shows somebody. They just scan a couple of your tweets. They can instantly see if you are serious or funny or stupid or any of those things.
All of the above.
Yes. With me, all of the above at the same time. But they can instantly see it versus this kind of almost sanitized Twitter that some people try to promote purely to get more followers.
And I bet you at the end of a lot of those calls as well, because like you have a design agency, you have communities, you have courses, you have a bunch of different things. You probably also leave those calls having just had a great conversation with people with like, oh, we should collaborate on this thing, or we should think about doing this together. And like so many different opportunities and ideas come out of that. And that all happens in the conversations, not in just publishing.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of just approached when it comes to doing stuff online, I approached it the same way I've always approached offline connections, which was just having chats with people and getting to know people and always being open to working with somebody on something. In my industry, particularly in the design industry, I mean, it's the same as a lot of industries really, but a lot of people in our industry are very closed to opportunities because they see you as competition.
Yeah.
So they'll never talk to you, or they'll never even, the possibility of collaboration it's not even an option. They're just looking at you to find ways to basically nick your ideas. So I've never tried to approach it like that. You know, it's the old abundance mindset versus, that kind of stuff.
Scarcity. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's worked amazingly on the internet for me because people are way more open on the internet.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this because this is I often think about this idea of like positive sum games, like everything that there is no like, first of all, that there are no totally new original ideas out there. Like everything is a remix, is a repurpose, is like you seeing patterns and things and putting your own spin on it, and that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes it actually non-competable because it's your take on it. And then the positive sum thing is that this pie is only growing. I mean, we were talking about NFTs earlier, like that's an example, but just so many different industries, like the course creation is the one I think about all the time. It's growing and growing and growing. And the more you have that collaborative growth mindset, like you said, the more the whole space grows, and those that are like adopting that mindset grow with it.
I completely agree. I have seen it most viscerally recently within NFTs, because already, and I see it a lot in podcasting too. Already, people in NFTs are like, you can't launch a collection now. It's already the hype's gone already, and this is 0.01 version 0.01 of NFTs, and people already think it's gone. And there's the same with courses and things as well, and even the same with design agencies and stuff like that to some extent, and communities. Everybody always says the same thing. I completely agree. Every time anybody says that to me, I'm always thinking, no, there's always room for you. And I always think about that with podcasting most obviously, because everybody always says, oh, there's 2 million podcasts now. There's nobody needs another podcast. But if you haven't made one, then there's always room for your podcast, right? Because your voice is not on a podcast yet. And I think that the same goes with a course. If you haven't made a course, then there's room in the market for your course because you are different to everybody else. And the same with Twitter, and the same with all of them, really. I don't understand the competition thing at all.
Yeah. I just wrote down this thing you said. Yeah, there's always room for you. I think that's such a powerful sentiment. I mean, just to build on that, like in the course world, I think of it as unique teacher identities. Like a lot of people teach a lot of the same things, but learning from someone is an intimate experience. And so the teacher's identity and personality and just vibe is so entwined in the content. And this is like a bit of a trope now, but the mental model, what's it called? The map is not the terrain, so the content is like, the content's kind of, you can get it for free on YouTube. Honestly, it's how the teacher delivers it and how they weave their own soul almost into it is what makes that special and unique. And that's what people are signing up for. That's what people are learning from. And like, I think you're right. I think it applies to podcasts and digital art collections and just, I mean, anything basically.
How often, here's a question then, in terms of the courses stuff, how often do you think it's people that are signing up just to see the person they've signed up to rather than learn the things that they want to learn?
I feel like you've been listening to my conversations over the last 2 weeks, because that's exactly what I've been thinking about a lot. Like, I mean, you take like Rite of Passage, David Perel, right? People are signing up for that to see how he goes about what he does, how he delivers his course, but also the sort of behind the scenes stuff that he's sharing about how he creates, how he writes and publishes and all that. And I mean, that's just one obvious, like, sort of big example right now, but I see that, I think, in every single course creator I've worked with, that and I do it as well. Like you want that, like, you're paying for access, especially in a live course, right? So you're getting that. You want to see, even actually in a self-paced. I signed up for Eric Jorgensen's course on leverage, and he wrote the Naval Manac, and just a very interesting guy, tweets like incredibly well. And I signed up for the course because, like, I want to, like, peer into his mind, sort of get like a bit more of an insight into how he thinks and that. So I think that's such a key point.
And that's a little bit of the problem, isn't it? When you get sucked into the not just the Twitter hamster wheel, but any kind of hamster wheel like this. If I say, right, I need to tweet 10 times per day, I'm going to look to the way other people tweet and I'm just going to replicate them. So every time I try to continue creating content for content's sake, I remove my personality from everything that I'm doing. It's not just Twitter, it's anything that we could do. And then when it comes to making something like a course, which is incredibly personal, well, nobody knows who you are at that point, do they?
Right.
And then, you know, all of us are teaching the same things, essentially. It's rare that somebody comes along wanting to teach something unique, is it? So if I was to launch a design course tomorrow and I'd never shown my personality online, nobody would buy it. Nobody would care.
Yeah. So I just got off a thing now with a bunch of course creators, actually, and this is just like a perfect example to footnote what she said there. It's like this person's teaching essentially like psychological safety, like how like it's a lot like productivity, probably personal development type stuff, but it's framed in, this is the most unique one I've heard in ages, ancestral matriarchy. So like ancestral wisdom from the matriarchal sort of lineage, I guess. And it's like, yeah, I mean, cool, great. Like credit to them. Like they've got that. That's a very unique spin, right? That's going to appeal to a lot of people and it's going to not appeal to a lot of people. And that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I was going through this when I did Justin Michaelet's 10x Creator course.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
A couple of months back. And maybe we'll get to talking about this, but I want to footnote it by saying cohort-based courses are not for me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
as a student or as a teacher?
No, Justin was great. The course was great. I'm not saying anything bad about the course, but the way that I am, I just don't jive with that kind of learning
environment.
I'm kind of a guy who jumps into things, wants to do things very quickly, wants to break things and get in and out. The cohort-based course is slowed down, and it's about bringing everybody along for the journey and meeting people and doing exercises together. Basically, what I'm saying is I'm quite a selfish individual learner. So,
I think a big part of that is you have had no problem taking action. You set yourself these ambitious goals, and you go ahead and you do that. You crank out those 10 tweets a day and all the things you've done, and that's a big part of what those courses help people who don't have that discipline, drive, all those kind of things. That's so the forcing function elements, I guess.
Yes. But the thing I was going to say, the course was great, and I was trying to work out what course I was going to make, because I went into the process knowing what I was going to make. So I'd just written the magic visual. I was just about to release the print version of it, and it was all going to tie in, and I was going to make a course about the magic visual. So I had it all in my mind. This is what I was going to do. And then I spoke to Justin about it a few times, and Justin was pushing me to make, I can't remember the wording that he used, but it made me completely see this in a different light. He was pushing me to make the course that kind of shows me, shows my personality. So my whole personality, all my experience kind of diluted into one course. So not just make another course, which the magic visual would have been. It was trying to push me to find the things that make me unique and sell that instead. So if you think of something like Eric Jorgensen's course, that's kind of uniquely Eric, and something like Jack Butcher's course is the uniquely Jack Butcher, because it's the way, it's his experience distilled, and that's the way he learned the things.
Yeah.
So he pushed me to do that, and I was like, well, the magic visual's not right now. That's just a thing I do. And it took me ages to work it out. But I was trying to work it out, and I went through so many iterations, and then eventually I got to the end of it and thought, I ended up coming up with this name, The Prolific Creative. That was going to be and still is the course I'm going to do at some point. Who knows when. And the whole idea for the course was to teach you how I am me. How I do all these things, because it's the thing I get asked all the time. Craig, how do you do everything that you do? So the course is about basically how to be prolific and how to link all these things together and not lose your mind and not spend all your time on your computer. So the underlying level is that. But really the way I dressed it up is, I've got the landing page kicking about somewhere still. It's kind of old school. The design of it's really old fashioned. It's kind of like a 1920s style, and it's about teaching you the life, the art, and the understanding of being prolific. So it's kind of like foundational knowledge. So the whole style of it is very different to any other course that's already said this kind of information. Probably even some elements of it would be in Eric's course about leverage.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took me a while, just what you were saying, it took me a while to work out that kind of distillation of personality into a different medium. That's the thing that's really hard, I think.
It is. And just to say about Justin Michael, I mean, that is like his gift.
Yes.
He is so good at that. I've been fortunate enough to work with him a little bit on the course I just launched, and he just creates like little unlocks for you, right? That then things just flow from that. This might be interesting to you. So I feel like the course I'm building now, which it's called Course of Action, is a similar idea. It's like, okay, this is how I did it. This is what I've been doing over the last year. Basically, you can do the same thing too. And my thing culminated in a 150-person course for On Deck. So this is the thing that I was putting it off. And I was going to launch a community first. It's going to be like $20 a month, whatever. And I had like written everything ready to like launch this community, been putting it out to my email list. And then the weekend before, I get on a call with Robbie Crabtree and Marie Poulin, my business partners, in a different thing. And they're like, don't do a community. It's going to be so much more work than it's worth. And then right after that, I got on a call with Ryan Dice from Digital Marketer. And he was like, yeah, like, this is not a good idea. You should sell. He's like, let me tell you a story. And he told me the story of the Sports Illustrated football phone. Do you know what that is? Or, okay, so it's obviously a very American thing. I didn't know what it was either, but you can go on YouTube, find the video, the ads for this thing. And it's like this, like, just disgusting looking football phone, like, like old school, like phone that you put up. But it was like a huge hit in the 80s or whatever. And they promoted it, and then they said, you can't buy it. You can't buy the phone. And it's all like these like cuts to like people going like, what? Like fake, like surprise. And then it goes, but you can get it for free if you subscribe to Sports Illustrated. And I was like, and so I'm going to put on a tangent here, but I was like, okay, shit, like, you are so right, Ryan. Like, so I spent that whole weekend just tweaking the offer. I basically collapsed the idea of the course, which I'd been postponing, and offered it with the community. I said, so this is the community, and you're going to get the course as well. And so we did like a live event, and I sold about 40 seats in it as a pre-sale. And I was like, all right. And now this is like 2 weeks ago, right? So now I'm like, I've just built the first module, and so going back to your thing about like distilling yourself into a thing, I'm now so motivated to do that. I'm cranking out content all the time for these people, which actually, to go back to what we were saying right at the beginning, is so much easier than just putting it out into the abyss on Twitter. It's like, these people have like given money and they want to learn from me. And all they signed up for was me. There's no content yet existing. So yeah, maybe that's a way to get Prolific Creator kickstarted.
I've been thinking a lot about it, actually, because I've got the Daily Visual community, and I've spoke to the people in there about this. There's about 20 of us, I think, at the minute, 22, and the community is $7 a month. And the whole idea behind it originally was people who are making visuals online daily get together in a Discord community. It used to be Slack, now it's Discord, obviously. And it's not been feeling right for a while. It's not growing. I'm not that interested in just talking about visuals. It was okay for a while, but now the NFT things come around and people are mixing and swirling around in other things. It feels like it needs to change. So my original plan with Daily Visual, because I saw this with the community, even with just 20 people, and we don't do that many things together. There's an office hours every week, or at least I try to have an office hours. Even that's time consuming. And then there's all the managing of the community. What I'm getting at is a lot of effort. So my original idea was, right, the front end for the community is going to be a course. So I was going to make a course just like you was describing, self-paced course, and that would be the front end for the community. So you buy the course, you get access to the community, and I still kind of want to do that, but I don't want to do that course anymore. So maybe that's it. Maybe it should be the prolific creative community instead, and the front end of the community, which is currently the daily visual community. Maybe that's the way around I need to do it, because I've just noticed, not just in myself but a lot of other people too, people aren't just interested in one kind of creative pursuit anymore. Things are moving so quickly on the net, not just in NFTs, but even if you're just a Twitter creator or whatever, and you've got aspirations to do that. Look at somebody like David Perel now. He's making images, he's making videos, he's writing tweets. He's even doing his own kind of version of atomic essays. That you're kind of a multimedia powerhouse, an individual. Nobody's
Publishing,
just kind of a media organization or a publishing organization. So that was the flip I'm trying to make. But maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that sounds like, so it just sounds like the right way to do it now that I've taken this step. Because the other cool thing about it is that you don't have to, the course isn't, it almost never has to be finished. Like, people will join at various parts of its evolution, and you can always add to it and sort of take it in different directions. And I actually think I was talking to KP about this, like, the Build in Public guy, and like, he was just like, I don't think anybody's really ever built a course in public, like a full-on course. And I think it's such an interesting idea. You really got me fired up when I was talking to him, because it's like, I'm gonna actually just kind of lean into that aspect of it and be like, this course might never be done, or finished, but it'll always be evolving and always changing, and people can join whenever, and they're actually buying into the community. They're not buying just a course.
So
interesting, right?
It is interesting. I was thinking about the same thing with the self-paced course, because I wanted to sign people up for a monthly subscription. So I was trying to think of ways to keep giving them value. And the thing I was thinking was continuously adding things. So I add in each weekly office hours, or adding new things that I'd seen. So the course would continue to expand and evolve and change when new things came out or things got old. I was thinking of the same kind of thing. But the blocker for me again was, well, I need to put the core knowledge in there. I need to have at least 24 lessons. Maybe it's split out over six categories, and just kind of the classic course. I thought I need to just make the course at least first, and then I can add the extra things on. I didn't have the balls to make a start from nothing.
So so this is it's crazy. I actually didn't really think about how different this is, and I think KP made me think of it now. This conversation, like you and I, I think this is a very interesting concept, and it gives you a lot of freedom, right? If you're like, okay, well, I don't have to have anything to start, and you can pre-sell small amounts or whatever. It won't make you a ton of money, but it will. But if you kind of adopt that mindset throughout, people just can join whenever, and you'll get those few early supporters, but then you'll have people join a little bit later, and that thing will keep growing and keep changing. And I mean, so one of the thoughts that comes to mind is that when I did the On Deck program, I joined them in January. They were like, let's get this thing out. Like, let's announce this. So we did it. I think we announced it in January, and then it was supposed to start in April. And I spent basically January through April selling the thing. And we made like $350,000. It was 150 people. Like, it did so well. And then I started building it.
Yeah.
And and it's sort of like, I probably wouldn't have done that if I'd not joined them and sort of had to go into that sort of that accelerated version of it. But yeah, it turned out fine. I mean, it was nearly fucking killed me, but it was an incredible forcing function to get all my thoughts out and ideas out, and it turned out to be successful. So
I bet what you're thinking is, how many of that 150 people could I have got if I would have started from zero and said, look, I'm working on this course for On Deck. Jump in now. There's nothing right now, but I'm working on it. We're going to build this course together.
Yeah.
How many of those 150 people could you have gotten the other way? And how much better would it have been as well?
Totally. I agree with you 99%. The only 1% here is that there is something to be said for that sort of live melting pot of sort of like that. You're at the coalface. You're like getting feedback instantly on what's working, what's not working. And so I learned a shitload during those 8 weeks that is now like going into the sort of second iteration of it. So yeah, it's tough. I don't know if I'd be able to, but I mean, I guess if you're thinking of it as something that's constantly evolving, then you kind of have that freedom to change it and explore. I think overall the takeaway here that both of you and I are talking about is that you don't have to have a finished product to be able to sell it and to be able to actually start like, in fact, you should rather sell it and then start really making it and have that be part of what people are buying. Just gives you so much more flexibility.
I love the idea because I kind of did it with Daily Visual. So when Daily Visual launched, I had the idea of having a library of content, basically, library of tutorials and things like that. And I was literally building that from nothing as the course was going on. So I started with a couple of the YouTube videos I'd done. And then when I got a question in the community, even if it was one person that asked it, I'd record a video and say, can I share this with everybody else? And that became content on the course. I guess it's a little bit of a different way of looking at it, where the person who is involved in the community or the course or whatever you want to call it, when they want to digest the information, they kind of have to go hunting a little bit because the structure isn't as delineated, is it? You haven't curated the things from 0 to 100. So when they come in, they've kind of got to search for the things that may or may not might be the answer for them. But then the other side of it that makes me think about it is, well, most of the time anyway, and this is the thing I tried to do with Daily Visual and I spectacularly failed, I'll admit that. The whole thing of Daily Visual being a community at the beginning was, and no tutorials, was I didn't want to give anybody any tutorials because I didn't want to give them the excuse of not starting. So the whole point was, you pay me $7, actually I think it's $9. You pay me $9, which is nothing, and you're going to start making visuals from day one, and I'm not going to tell you how to do them. That was the initial idea, and then I rode back and needed some tutorials because people were just asking. It's finding the balance between getting people to do something and not just gorge on all the information, isn't it?
Yeah. But also your content was probably better because it was created for specific questions that people actually had, like real people, where a lot of, when you start course creation, it's sort of like, well, this is what I think people need. Because I mean, you're just in your own echo chamber, but you had like actual questions from people. You created something, and then that became an asset for others. I think you make a great point at the beginning of this, though. Curation and organization are very valuable sort of services that you provide as a course creator. And it's probably something you can do a bit over time, but you definitely have to be thinking about that. It's like, as you create it, like make it easy for people to find it, start to build out a bit of a sort of curriculum of like what people, so that it caters to different starting points and that kind of thing. But I think you have to be thinking about that.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, particularly for me, because I'm not particularly organized kind of person unless I'm working on a big project in the agency, which forces me to be organized. When it comes to anything that I do for myself, I very much prefer jumping in 2 feet first and not organizing any of it. So with all the visuals I've been doing daily, there's 900 and odd of them, and I haven't catalogued any of them, and now I'm trying to catalogue them in reverse rather than doing it when I first did it. It's a massive, it's an effort. It's a massive effort, and that's the kind of thing that I've got in the back of my mind of this kind of live course idea. you get 900 videos or lessons into it, and you're trying to catalog it all and curate it and decide where it all goes. How do you even do that?
Yeah, it's it's difficult to do in retrospect. I'm just like looking at this strewn out set of notes and stuff that I have here. Like a lot of it was planned out, and even with the ODCC one, I started with something, and maybe that's the lesson. It's like have some framework in mind that's broad enough that you can sort of fit ideas into, but be flexible. There was stuff that when we were doing it live and week 4 or whatever, I was like, oh, I should have probably done this earlier, or like this is too advanced, I should do this later. And so you got to kind of have that flexibility in mind as well. But yeah, it is hard.
It is. And the thing that always stops me from doing a course, this is the biggest blocker for me. It isn't doing the work to put the course together. I could get past that. It isn't even having the idea, because as we just discussed, I've got a pretty good idea. It's the fact that I can't rationalize how to make people do the course and get something valuable from it. I don't want to just make something that nobody uses. So that's the biggest blocker for me, because I don't want to be that person that's made the course that 90% of people don't complete. So I'm still trying to work that out in my own head. That's the biggest blocker for me. I don't want to add to the noise, essentially.
Yeah. So it's not that you're not concerned that you can't create transformations. You're concerned that people won't go through the steps necessary to create them.
Yes. How do I force is probably the wrong word, but it's the one that I'll use. How do I force somebody to get to the transformation that I know they will get if they go through the course? Yeah.
So I'll give you one thing that I've seen work, which I tell everyone that I work with, is in your course, have one of the first things you do, and do it often from then onwards, opportunities for students to reflect on why they are doing the course, what does success, even visualizing what success looks like, that kind of stuff. Just very personal reflection, which sometimes they might share if there's a community, but also just write it down and keep it. Because and there's like actually a bunch of research around this as well, but what you find is when people sort of verbalize or visualize or whatever, just put in writing their thoughts on what they want to get out of it, why they're doing it, that makes it more concrete. And it's sort of, that is their motivational, it's their intrinsic motivation that keeps them going throughout it. And so then it relieves the pressure from you as the course creator, because you're not giving them the reason, they're giving themselves the reason, and then you give them the path.
Interesting. I've never really thought of it like that. But still then, what is the percentage of people that actually go on and use something from the knowledge, right?
Yeah. And that's a good question. I mean, this feels like an easy answer maybe, but the thing is, like, how strong is that intrinsic motivation? Right. And you can't really control that as the creator. So if they signed up for it and it's not really that strong and they've got other priorities that are like taking it, then that's like, it's tough, because part of me wants to be like, no, but I want to fight for the student and like get them through it. But yeah, it's hard because you can't force, right? Like you're alluding to, it has to really come from them.
I've seen it before, which I guess is why I've got a little bit of educator PTSD from it, because I used to teach in formal education. I only did it once or twice a year, and I only got into it as a favor for a friend. And I used to teach web design in person in a classroom. And it always used to piss me off when somebody just wouldn't pay attention or wouldn't use the knowledge that was getting given them, because I knew, it's still the same today. I'm talking, I started doing this like 8 years ago or something like that, but it's still the same today. You get into web design or any of those skills, you've got a skill for life, essentially. The world is your oyster. And it really used to annoy me when somebody was blatantly sat there, not using the knowledge, and I was in front of them and I could look into their eyes. So when when you've got the whole course situation, and you scale everything up essentially, if be it a self-paced course or a cohort-based course, you've kind of got to let go of that personal connection a little bit, haven't you? Because with 150 people like your course, there's no way you get into everybody, is there?
No. That's where the community then comes in. So if you've and the benefit of sharing some of those reflections with each other, so you get so there's like a couple stages to it. So first of all, they have to connect and get to know each other, and so that's I talk about it as like destination, journey, and then accountability groups. There's 3 groups. So destination is like that's your set. This is what it means to be a prolific creator, and you set that journey for people, or that destination for people. Then they find people that are in the same stage. So some are people starting out, some might be a little bit more advanced and want to get into a different medium or channel, and so they like start to get a group like that. Then they get to know each other, and then they form bonds. And some people are like, okay, well, we just don't gel, but like you and I do. And I'm to the point where I'm willing to share like why I'm doing this course. Like what is it I really want to get out of this? What is important to me? It's not even like what I want to get out of the course, what I want to get out of life, like why am I here kind of thing. And that's when if you're sharing that with someone, you're kind of making that accountability pact for them to say like, this is what this course I think is going to do for me. This is why I'm doing it. And so those sort of accountability groups, the smallest of those groups, need to be organic. There need to be people that just gel, they get along, and they make that commitment to each other. And then you get these pods you can think of like within your course, that you as the creator don't always have to be the one who's like, making sure that they're taking the action. But everything I just said is harder. It's easier said than done, right? And it's like probably harder than actually creating the content.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing I'm struggling with. I definitely wouldn't make a cohort-based course. That is not even on my horizon, because I know after seeing Justin and the amount of stress he was under, the amount of pressure he was under, there's just no way I want to pull that thread. No time soon. And like you said, it nearly killed you when you did it. And I think there was 20 of us in his. I can imagine scaling that up to 150. It's an absolute fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
So there's not even a thread I want to pull that at the minute.
Yeah. I think your model you just described earlier, like you do with your community with the office hours and that. So you've got some accessibility to people, and you should obviously charge a lot more for that, because that's probably the most valuable thing people can get from you is access to you. But and so you find the balance with that. What does that look like? Is it a monthly office hours or weekly? Is it like are you recording? Like one of the things this is a good example. For people who have questions in my self-paced course, I got this idea from another creator. She's a guru in making toys, like coming up with the idea and like creating a physical toy. And she has this thing where she has a podcast that she does, exclusive podcast for her audience, where they get to ask questions, through some form, and then twice a month she'll go through those questions and answer them and publish it as a podcast. And so people can like walk around twice a month and listening so they get to like hear what others are asking, which is valuable in and of itself, and then they get to hear her response. And she's not, dealing one-on-one. She's sort of one-to-many with her response. That was a cool idea.
That's a really cool idea, actually. I like that. What do you think about disconnecting from a course? Oh, my Alexa is talking to me.
Alexa, what do you think about disconnecting from a course?
Alexa, stop.
What do you mean by disconnecting?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to finish it because I shouldn't say Alexa because she's interrupting. Yeah, you was kind of alluding to it a little bit there about access. This idea of access to the teacher, and I've seen this mentioned a few times. This is the thing that I feel the most guilty about. That if you're in a community or you're running a community, or even you make a course, I feel like you have to make yourself accessible to the students all of the time. And I know that's a big no in a lot of kind of course fundamentals, I guess.
I think I don't think it's a straight out no. I think that's too binary. I think you need to have a proper value of that time. So for you, when you told me a $9 a month course and you do a weekly office hours, that feels like you're underselling the value of your time. You may have 900 people spending $9 a month, and that's worth it. But so you need to do the maths wherever you are if you're listening to this. But you've got to put a value on that time, right? And I think, and someone told me this as well, as like, so this wasn't my idea, but made me think quite long and hard about this. Is that if you're creating a perception of value as well, right? So you have to be thinking about that. So if it's a handful of people, if you could do the whole calculation. I mean, like, so if it's $200 for me to show up once a week on a call, like that's pretty low. Like that's probably not the kind of perception you want to be creating, and shouldn't, because you've got the results to show for it. So yeah, I think it's sort of that. It's like really first, like, what is my time worth, and what is the perception, and being just not what perception I want to create, but just being cognizant of the perception, and then valuing your access accordingly. So maybe there's a tiered version that has a weekly office hours, and it's like, so Ali Abdal did this with his YouTuber thing where. I got into it because I was helping him behind the scenes, but there was like an executive membership that outside of all the other stuff where he was present, like felt like 40 hours a week, but outside of that, we met with this group of executive members, $20, 20 people, and they were paying like probably $3,000 or $4,000 more for the course for that access. So I think that's the way to think about that.
But how do you rationalize it with yourself when you kind of want to? And this is probably the place where a lot of people are. I'm making my new course. I want to get it out to as many people as possible. So I'm gonna make the self-paced course I've made $50 because that seems to be the price that they all are on Gumroad. And then to make it really attractive, I do a weekly office hours and all that kind of thing. How do you elevate it from the $50 Gumroad course to the like multiples of thousands that some of the on deck courses are and some of the other stuff?
Yeah.
Is it literally just having the balls to just increase the price?
Some of it is actually, yeah. Some of it 100% is that. And we did this with On Deck actually. So their standard thing was $2,000, and myself and Robbie both said we want ours to be $3,000. And they were like, oof, that's not really like our normal thing. And there's, whatever. So we ended up, they were like, okay, cool. We're down for experiments. Let's give it a shot. And I sold 150 seats in that thing. So it's like, so yeah, you don't know if you don't try it. So that's definitely one point. Someone told me that, and I just need to make sure I get this right. It's easier to lower your price than it is to raise it. Wait, yes. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. I use that with my clients a lot.
You do? Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So you can always come down and discount it. Yeah, basically. Right. So yeah, it's just, you can just discount it. So it's like, there's no massive downside to putting it up. Another thing I learned is that you should always have two options for people. So maybe you do have the $50 option, so you get as many people in as possible. Then you have a $500 option that also has the weekly office hours. Or it's like maybe the podcast thing, so like there's some level, so it's, you control that access. And there you got people who are like, this was actually Nathan Barry from ConvertKit was saying, like, some people, that's a rounding error. And they're like, 500, I might as well do the 500 one. But others might be like, I can't, I'll do the 50, but they're still going to get a ton of value in that 50 because they're just missing out the live stuff. So yeah, there's no like formula for this.
No, I was talking about it with Arvid Carl and Jamie Russo recently. And we were all just talking about how guilty we feel about pricing things. And it's totally strange because I run an agency and we would never even touch almost any project that is under multiples of thousands of pounds. Yeah. So I'm not unfamiliar with charging a lot of money for a project and sitting in a Zoom call like this and going, look, Andrew, this project is X amount. This is 20,000, this is 30,000, this is 50,000, and then handling all the objections. But then when it comes to me personally, without the agency around me, just Craig, I get all guilty about it. And
it is weird, right? Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's strange. It is strange.
Do you think it's because I don't know, maybe you pitch into the same audience, but isn't the agency focused on a B2B buyer?
Yes.
And I feel like that plays into it a bit as well. It's like, well, it's not this person's wallet that the money's coming out of, right? That's where it changes the dynamic a little bit.
I think also it's the fact that I haven't kind of proven myself as a creator, whatever that even means. You know, like me, like you, really, I've only been present online for a year, so I sometimes feel like I am new to the things that is necessary to be a creator, so I can't charge the prices that I potentially probably would. But that is backed by 16 years of industry experience of being a designer. So it's weird. You feel like you have to just fit into the price point that everybody else does. So I obviously started with Gumroad like everybody else does. And I thought, well, I want to make this book. All the rest of the books are $39 or $20 or whatever. So it's going to have to be that price. And all of my old stuff that's on Gumroad now is like $5 or something, because I feel like because it's old, I just don't want to charge a lot of money for it. It's weird. It is really strange. I don't have an answer for it. Maybe now after this talk, maybe I'll just put a huge price tag on it and then a lower price tag and a really low one.
Yeah.
Because the other phrase is, sorry to interrupt, I just want to say this this one more thing. It's slightly like what you just said about pricing. The other thing I always say to clients is you never know how much money you're leaving on the table if you don't have a high price option.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So always with the agency, there'll be a really high price option.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's someone who's price insensitive and they'll be like, oh yeah, I want the best, whatever you have. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I just wanted to reiterate what you're saying, because I think you and I are so similar. I've also got about 16 years experience doing this in a B2B setting, and now I've been a year in this, and I get told all the time, Andrew, you need to raise your prices. This is way too low. You know, so one thing I tried, which actually worked really well, and I got like good feedback on it actually from people who ended up buying it, was using, and I got this idea from Steph Smith, like the raising tiers.
Yeah.
So there's like 10 at like $100, and then there's 10 at 200, and now it's like, the course that I'm doing is now I think it's at 500. But those first few tiers sold out super quickly because people were like, and they thought that was such a great idea because it just like spurred them to do it right away, because they're like, oh yeah, it's a no-brainer. So that's a nice way to try it. It gives you can also, just like, if you're not selling out of tier, you can just, that's your price basically, right?
And it doesn't feel fake either, does it? It feels genuine, even though it's a marketing tactic, but it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel fake scarcity again, even though it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You kind of like, you're just doing it in public. You're like, I'm trying to figure out the price. See what people are willing to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's all strange. Do you have to go?
Yeah.
And now on the
I can stick around for a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, we ended up talking about courses and things way more than I thought we would.
I know. That was fun.
But I hope it's not reiterated all the same points you've said on every other bloody podcast you've done.
It categorically is not, because I think I actually would love a recording of this. I could listen to it again, and sort of like a lot of new ideas here. And you've made me realize that this idea of, it sounds like it's something that you might sort of lean into doing as well, is this idea of sort of building a course in public, and every element of it just creates it's just a relief. You don't have to like have it all figured out to be able to sell something.
It kind of fits perfectly for me for the prolific creative, because the whole underlying fundamental of everything that I know that is in my core being is to do something every day or very regularly until some kind of signal comes out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that whole core idea of the flywheel and the signal and making noise until signal appears, it just fits perfectly for creating some kind of course around the idea of doing exactly that.
It's a meta, yeah. It's very meta.
Yeah, it's a meta course about a meta idea which could potentially just keep going down another 5 levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this. I want to keep exploring this idea of a course that basically is never finished. It's like you're signing up, you're part of the membership, you can leave whenever you want, but you're always getting a new thing and it's always changing, it's always evolving. And yeah, I think that's so fascinating.
Do you think there's appetite for people paying a monthly fee for a course instead of a one-off hit?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I had it with mine. So I had a, not many took up the monthly option because I actually made it back quite a lot higher. I wanted people to commit for the full 12 months. But and actually with my monthly, you do need to spend the full 12 months like you do. And so I still need to figure out what happens if someone is like, I want out after 6 months. I'll probably just let them. But yeah, I'm like, you need to make the 12-month commitment. It's probably similar to yours, right? Like you can't just like try this thing for 30 days and be like, oh, it's not for me. It's like the whole point of this is that you develop a habit and you be consistent and you don't see results immediately. So yeah, I definitely think so because, and actually this is the other like aspect of it. I think a course is not, the idea of a course as not just a finite period of time, but like something it's a way of life. It's a habit. It's the stuff they learn from you is something they can use throughout their life and would probably benefit from practicing within the community and getting the newest content, whatever your thoughts on it. So it truly is lifelong learning.
Well, the formal education really is just the flint, isn't it? It's just the flint against the fire. Usually, you're trying to light the fire in them, and you just want to give them. Really, the way I always looked at it, even in formal education, you want to give them as little as possible that is useful, that they can actually implement, so it fires their knowledge to go find crazy detail about the stuff. Yeah. Because the truth is, they don't need all the detail at first; they need enough to fire them up to get them started.
I love that idea of defaulting to less content. That is, and most course creators struggle with that. Course creators struggle with that because you feel like I need to tell them everything I know. I need to answer every question up front. And remember, like we talked about earlier, like most people don't know what questions people actually have until you go through it. So just resisting that urge. I saw this with ODCC, and I'm now applying that. Like it's such you do students a disservice by putting too much out there. And it just confuses and overwhelms them, and then they're not taking action, like you said.
It's a little bit like the thing that Jack Butcher did with both of his courses. They are very short and to the point. There isn't much in them. It doesn't take long to go through the courses, but I think it's better for that because you can just instantly apply the things that you've learned. It gives you the fundamentals, no more than that, and then you're off and away. I think there's a lot of value to be provided with that, especially if there's a community as well on the back end to get them started.
You missed the beep there, by the way.
Oh, sorry. It's because in my other podcast, which you'll probably never listen to, but I have a podcast called The Wednesday Audio, which is it's kind of a fever dream of a podcast, and I take the piss out of value and content and all this kind of stuff.
Well, now I'm going to listen to it. That's amazing.
Listen at your own peril. That's what I'll say. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Cool. Well, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I hope this is what you were hoping to talk about today.
No, it's been amazing. I'm conscious of your time, so I think it's probably best that we wrap up. It wasn't what I expected, but that's the perfect thing for these kind of conversations. We didn't talk about the usual course shit, and I think there's still way more things I wanted to ask that we won't get time to go into, particularly about rite of passage that you mentioned at the beginning. I've got a lot of things I want to ask about that, so maybe we'll have to do a part 2 at some point. You know. Particularly one of the main questions, you don't have to answer it now, but it feels like with Rite of Passage and some of the other bigger courses, all they are doing is pushing for more and more students. So where is the tipping point for that? How do you keep the quality when the students keep going up? Surely there should be some cutoff point where you're like, this is enough students. I'm making enough money. Let's make it all about the quality of the course. So that, you know, that kind of idea.
I could go into that, but I'm happy to wait for a part 2 as well. I mean, I honestly, I think the stuff we talked about in this episode now, this conversation now is pretty raw and unique and interesting. And not many people are talking about it, certainly not doing it. So I think there's something, and I sort of had that validated from, you know, the Build in Public guy himself. So yeah, I think this was a good one. This was a really good conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you brought most of the value. Sorry. Value. It's been awesome, man. Let's arrange a part 2. And
cool. Yeah, whenever you want. And yeah, just no credit to you for like the way I've never had a conversation like this, or I don't even know what to call it, a recording or a conversation, because it is like an amalgamation of the two. I don't even know we were recording.
That's what I want. That's what I want. It doesn't feel like a podcast. We've just had a conversation that it just happens to be published online. That's the whole purpose. Purpose of it. Because the whole thing I was saying about the bet at the beginning, people want to feel like the third person in the room with a podcast, and unless it feels like two people having a genuine conversation, you can't possibly feel like the third person in the room. So that's the bet. That's the bet.
Yeah. Do you do any editing, Tim?
No. I do minimal editing. The only editing I'll do is sometimes I'll lift the levels. So if the guest is particularly quiet, I might lift the levels, and I'll also put one of my favorite pieces onto the beginning of the podcast. That's literally the only editing I do. Until very recently, I used to publish them live, so they were live streamed. They went out straight away. I'm not doing that at the minute, but everything else is the same. It's recorded as live, released as live.
Awesome.
Warts and all. That's the whole point.
Awesome.
Whole point.
Yeah, well, let me know how I can help sort of promote it, put it out there. And I had so much fun doing this. All right. Thanks for having me, Greg. See you around.
Later.